so strong. God is the ruler.
Today is the day we put aside to remember fallen heroes and to pray that no heroes will ever have to die for us again. They chose to reject the fashionable skepticism of their time. They chose to believe and answer the call of duty. They stood for something, and we owe them something. Freedom and the dignity of the individual have been more available and assured here than in any other place on earth. The price for this freedom at times has been high, but we have never been unwilling to pay that price. And to pray that no heroes will ever have to die for us again. They chose to reject the fashionable skepticism of their time. They chose to believe and answer the call of duty. They stood for something, and we owe them something. Freedom and the dignity of the individual have been more available and assured here than in any other place on earth. The price for this freedom at times has been high.
Morning, everyone. Take a moment and find your seats, and we'll go ahead and get started. Before we jump into things this morning, though, we wanted to take a moment and recognize Rick and Janet Butler. A round of applause for them. 55 years. 55 years. Look at that couple right there. When was that, 1925, Rick, or close? Yeah, pretty young. No, we got some great pictures of these guys. And double nickels this year. That's pretty crazy. That's amazing anymore, really. Good stuff. That's so cool. 55. Are you guys both from Canastaiga area? Yeah. Right down the street. Gotcha.
We did get out of town for a while, though.
Yeah. And then came back. Oh, that's so great. And we have another couple in the church. I think they're just a little bit behind them. Was that what we decided? Russ and Phyllis, they're coming up on it. We can hold off. We'll celebrate that too, but they're just a little bit behind them. But yeah, that's pretty fantastic. I'm kind of curious. Anybody even close to 55? Is anybody in the 40s? Been married 40 years? Oh, there's a few. There's a few. Okay. Very good. How about married 30 years or more? In that range. Yep, in the 30s, there's a few of us, yeah. 20s, there it is. There's a few. 20s, all right, good deal. Anybody make it past, they're in the tens of years? We're doing good? Yep, there's a few. Yep. All right, what about 0 to 10 years? There's the happy people. And everybody who raised their hand before them said, oh, just give us some time. They'll only get happier as time goes on. That's what I meant by that. I don't know what you guys are thinking. Terrible people. But, hey, if we could, real quick, anybody, I know it's not Veterans Day and it's Memorial Day, but I still like to recognize those who served in our armed forces. So if anybody in here this morning, if you would stand up, please. We could give a thank you for your service. Very much so. Absolutely. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I have, we're going to kill the lights, and I got 2 videos to watch. As we watch these, I just try to pay attention and take it in, and then we're going to talk about them a little bit as we dive in this morning.
I don't know. I've lived a good life. I mean, I've had a lot of happiness, smiling, telling everybody that everything was beautiful every day. If I went into my church and didn't say everything was beautiful, they'd think I was sick. And I'm not that way. I mean, I sincerely believe in this old world that everything is beautiful. I mean, if I wake up in the morning and see these plants out here and all those flowers that are in there and the green grass on the ground, that's beautiful. And people don't realize what they have. They bitch about it. They do. And then nowadays, I am so upset that the things we did and the things we fought for and the boys that died for it, it's all gone down the drain. Our country's gone to hell in a handbasket. We haven't got the country we had when I was raised. Not at all. Nobody will have the fun I had. Nobody will have the opportunity I had. It's just not the same. That's not what our boys, that's not what they died for. It's just not it. Darling, I'm so sorry. I'll be all right. Just takes me time to get over it. Because why me? See, sitting here like this, see, all this going on.
It's crazy.
Listen, it's just, Emily, it's just not the same. That isn't what we fought for. Oh, well, I should be worried about it, I guess. I'm 100 years old, they say.
That one will be
I'm not, I worry about it. Yes, I worry.
Now will be my fight. Yeah. For sure.
Well, okay, you just remember everything's beautiful, and live every day to the fullest. Just enjoy everything you possibly can.
Today is the day we put aside to remember fallen heroes and to pray that no heroes will ever have to die for us again. They chose to reject the fashionable skepticism of their time. They chose to believe and answer the call of duty. They stood for something, and we owe them something. Freedom and the dignity of the individual have been more available and assured here than in any other place on earth. The price for this freedom at times has been high, but we have never been unwilling to pay that price. As for the enemies of freedom, those who are potential adversaries, they will be reminded that peace is the highest aspiration of the American people. We will negotiate for it, sacrifice for it. We will not surrender for it now or ever. We must realize that no weapon in the arsenals of the world is so formidable as the will and moral courage of free men and women. It is a weapon our adversaries in today's world do not have. It is a weapon that we as Americans do have. With God's help, we can and will resolve the problems which now confront us. And after all, why shouldn't we believe that? We are Americans. At the grave of a hero, we end not with sorrow at the inevitable loss, but with the contagion of his courage, and with a kind of desperate joy, we go back to the fight.
So a couple interesting videos there. The first one, that veteran, was 100 years old, if you caught that. That was filmed 2 years ago. And it's pretty powerful. And if you weren't catching the subtleties of what he was talking about, I'll help you. He was a World War II vet. And what he was upset about is how trivial things have become in our society. How back then they were literally fighting against the axis of evil. Powers that be, Japan and Germany, Italy, trying to take over the entire planet and take away freedom across this planet. And he was there. He saw it. He had friends who died for it. And then he's seeing the world around him, and it's affecting him in a very negative way. And he was saying, if you caught it when he was crying, this is not what they died for. So that we can become petty and complain about every little inconvenience or every little thing that we don't like or care for. To the point of tears. To the point of tears. It's incredible to think about. And I think that's the problem that happens. We forget. We talk about it all the time. Never forget. Never forget. There's a reason we have those slogans and those axioms and those things that we throw out there, because unfortunately human nature is we forget. And as time pushes on and pushes forward, little by little, what was so powerful begins to erode, just like water running over rock. You would think probably at the conclusion of World War II, nobody would ever forget what was at stake. But give it time. And we look at rocks and we think, there's no way water can carve these rocks. But it does, over time. And the same thing happens. Over time, we begin to forget. And it erodes. And so Memorial Day is extremely important. Extremely important. And I'm not talking about a barbecue. And I'm not against the barbecue, because those same guys would tell you that is part of what they fought for, so that you could be with your friends and your family and enjoy them without fear. So I got no problem with that. But also, I do think it's a fair challenge to each and every one of us to get it in our heads that we really shouldn't forget. We should remember. And it will be harder as time travels on. It becomes harder and harder and harder to remember those things. But it's an exercise. In my opinion, it's a discipline to choose not to forget. It's so important. And I'm going to take you from the military and all the different wonderful branches that have served and held us and have fought incredible battles and wars to keep us free, and that's absolutely true. I'm going to take you from that to, of course, my job is to take you to a spiritual place. So I challenge you with not forgetting in our world and our country and our warriors and our people who have passed, paying the price. But I want to take you now to a spiritual thing, because the same problem exists, because it's a human condition. Not only do we forget in life, but we also forget spiritually things that God has done for us. And it's an incredibly, almost scary human trait, how quickly we forget things. And so I'm going to share with you 3 powerful stories out of the Bible where people forgot. They forgot what God did. They watched their mighty faith in God, knowing that He could get them through any circumstance, through any trouble, through anything that they might be going on, reduced to you've little faith after they experienced amazing things. So let's talk about it. The first story is called The Unmerciful Servant. The Unmerciful Servant. As I read this, I want you to begin to apply to yourselves, what have you forgotten that God has done for you that you just kind of let it fade away? Let the water of time just erode your memory and the deep gratitude in your heart of what God has done for you. The key to this story in the Bible is forgiveness and mercy are similar to water. They are designed to flow. Refusing to pay forgiveness and mercy forward will result in a knot in your hose. It's that simple. It's meant to flow. We receive from God grace and mercy and forgiveness, and then we find ourselves in a position that we want to tie a knot in the hose. And yeah, I'll take all the grace and mercy and forgiveness, but I'm not paying it forward. It stops here with me. And God's saying, that's not how it works. Because that knot in your hose will one day cause a burst. And then you're going to find yourself with nothing. Matthew 18. Then Peter came to Jesus and asked, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? Up to 7 times? There's a whole lot packed in that. I won't get into it too much, but in the Old Testament, they had rules about how many times they had to forgive. And so Jesus answered, I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times. And that's just how it sounds. He was going, you think it's 7? Pfft, not even close, buddy. Jesus didn't mean a literal number. When he responded to that, he's not saying 70, trust me, if you're counting, well, 70 times 7, what is that exactly? I got to have a book here and keep track, I got some people are getting close to getting cut off. That's not what Jesus was getting at. He was saying it should never stop. It should always flow. It should always flow. Therefore, the kingdom of heaven is like a king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. As he began the settlement, a man who owed him 10,000 bags of gold, forget the gold, just 10,000 bags seems like a lot, right? 10,000 bags of gold was brought to him. Since he was not able to pay, the master ordered that he and his wife and his children and all that they had be sold to repay the debt. In other words, they were going to become slaves and work it off. At this, the servant fell on his knees before him, Be patient with me, he begged, and I will pay back everything. The servant's master took pity on him and canceled the debt and let him go. The mercy and forgiveness flowed from the master right to the servant. But when that servant went out, he found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 silver coins. He grabbed him and he began to choke him. Pay back what you owe me, he demanded. His fellow servant fell to his knees. We see in a repeat here in the story. He fell to his knees and begged him, be patient with me, I'll pay it back. But he refused. Instead, he went off and had the man thrown into prison until he could pay the debt. He got mercy and forgiveness from the master, but he tied a big old knot in his hose and said, I'm not going to let it flow past me. I'm not going to pay it forward. Wow. When the other servants saw what had happened, they were outraged and went and told their master everything that had happened. The story doesn't end well. Look it up later and read it, at least for that guy. So here's the point. Mercy and forgiveness is meant to flow. Mercy and forgiveness are never earned. It's never earned. It's given. You don't earn mercy and forgiveness. You can't. It is something you receive at the kindness of the person who's in the position to forgive or not to forgive. It has everything to do with the person who decides to give grace and mercy. Really doesn't have a whole lot to do with the person who's in the position of needing grace and mercy. It's at the mercy of the person who decides to do it or not, right? But then if you do receive, we're warned by Jesus that the way the kingdom of God works is we don't tie a knot in that hose. You need to leave that hose open and let it flow. And just like you've been forgiven, even though you didn't deserve it, even though you didn't earn it, just like you had been forgiven, you need to pay that forgiveness forward to others in the same way. How quickly did this guy forget? What God did for him, forgave him, didn't just say, okay, I'll give you time to work it off. He said, I'll wipe your debt clean. You owe nothing. It didn't take this guy too long. He leaves there within a day or whatever. He's out there choking a guy saying, give him my money. That's a pretty bad short-term memory issue right there. The second story, where we see a short-term memory problem where the people have forgotten what God has done, is what I call forgetful Elijah. Forgetful Elijah. Check this story out. The key here in Elijah's story is this. It is an amazingly human trait to forget so quickly something so amazing. God has done some pretty incredible things for us, and we need to remember it long term. Back in the Old Testament in 1 Kings chapter 18, please answer me so these people will know that you are the Lord God. This is Elijah praying to God. And that you will return their hearts back to you. The Lord immediately sent fire and burned up the sacrifice, the wood and the stones, not just the stuff he had in there. What was going on, to give you a quick background, is we were basically having a battle of my daddy can whoop your daddy. That's my paraphrase, but that's exactly what was going on. And you had these prophets of Baal and all these people there, and then you had Elijah. And Elijah had faith. He stood up and he said, basically, my daddy can whoop your daddy. You got no idea who my daddy is, and I'm telling you, you don't want to go there, right? And so then it gets into this huge thing, and Elijah gets really bold, right? And he puts the sacrifices in there, and then he was absolutely being a little bit cocky, wouldn't you say? Bring the hose here. Not only am I going to put it in there, I'm going to hose it down. Right? And so he's up in the ante. Watch this. And of course, a wet sacrifice is not a problem for God. And so we jump into the story, and this is what happens. God answers him. And he sent the fire, and it burned up the sacrifice, the wet sacrifice. But not only the sacrifice, it burned up the wood and the stones. I don't know about you, but melting stones is not easy. I burnt some wood before, but I've never melted stones. It scorched the ground and everywhere around the altar and dried up every drop of water in the ditch. God showed up. Elijah wasn't lying. His daddy could whip their daddy. And that's exactly what happened. When the crowd saw what happened, they all bowed down smartly and shouted, "The Lord is God. The Lord is God." You know, like, you win. Uncle, whatever version you want to read. That's all in the message. Jezebel, the sweetheart she is, bless her heart, in the most southern way I can say that, she sent a message to Elijah. "You killed my prophets. Now I'm going to kill you. I pray that the gods will punish me even more severely if I don't do it by this time tomorrow." She's mad. Elijah was afraid when he got her message. And he ran to the town of Beersheba in Judah, and he left his servant there. Then he walked another whole day into the desert, finally came to a large bush, sat down in the shade, and then he begged the Lord, "I've had enough. Just let me die. I'm no better off than my ancestors." Wow. He just had the most epic standoff with these guys. Even up the ante, bragging, like, "Bring the hose, I'll show you." And God shows up in this huge way and not only burn up the sacrifice, but burn up everything around it, including a lot of those false prophets. It was amazing. And how does he respond? Well, he says, "You're going to kill me. I'm getting out of here." And he ran and ran and ran and ran. And then he finally sits down and he starts crying to God, starts whining to God. Does that not hit anybody how crazy that is? God just did this huge thing, and now you're scared? You know what's scary? We a lot like Elijah. We are a lot like Elijah. Don't like to admit it, but we are. How quickly we forget the amazing things God has done. How quickly we forget. Who's guilty? I'll say it. I'm guilty. God has done some amazing things in my life. Then a new problem comes along, and I'm just like, whoa. You know, what is it? Chicken Little. All right? The sky's falling. The sky's falling. I don't know how we're going to make it through this. Right? We've all done it pretty much, right? It's a frustrating human trait. Where instead we should pull on our faith and pull on remembering what God did. This isn't nothing for God. He took me through this. Isn't it interesting how David actually got it right? What did David do when he faced Goliath? He remembered what God did. He delivered me from the bear. He delivered me from the lion. This punk ain't nothing compared to those. I think that's in the message too. I got to stop reading the message. It's really... But David got it right. He pulled on his faith. He pulled on the memory of what God did for him. And he carried that forward in faith so he could tackle what was coming at him. Incredible. Lord, I pray that we could all be a little bit more like David in that scenario and a lot less like Elijah. Now, don't get all upset and frustrated with Elijah, because my point is probably most of us would have done the same thing. Jezebel must have been scary, I can tell you that. I mean, she must have been mad. Number 3, one more story. Back in the early 80s, there was a song by this band called Jeff Moore and the Distance. Probably 3 people know who they are now. Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Jason. My people. It's like 84. He had this beautiful song called Where Are the Other Nine? Do you remember that at all? So I went and looked it up because I was going to play it for you all. And then I listened to it, and it was very much made in the 80s. And I thought, I can't play this. I'm like, we could do the song, but I'd have to get Jesse and Pat. We'd have to redo it because there's the cheesiest keyboard on that thing. It was like a Commodore 64 kind of keyboard action going on. But the melody and the lyrics are beautiful, and it's the story of Where Are the Other Nine. So let me read it to you. Where are the other 9? This is Jesus directly. Here's the challenge. This is a good one. We must not get so familiar with Jesus in our lives that we take him for granted. Jesus points out that his own family forgot to thank him. Therein lies the danger, as we too are a part of his family. You ever notice that sometimes those are the people you take for granted the most? His close, immediate family. You don't always mean it. It's just, I don't know. We get so familiar. We get so used to just being around each other that I think sometimes we can fall into that, where we just kind of take things for granted. For sure. Luke 17. Jesus heals 10 men with leprosy. Now on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. As he was going into a village, 10 men who had leprosy met him. They stood at a distance, and they called out in a loud voice, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." When he saw them, he said, "Go show yourselves to the priest." That was their custom, to be deemed clean so they could rejoin the community. They would have to have a priest say, "You're clean, you're good, you can come back in," because they were really scared of leprosy. Think AIDS, when AIDS first broke out in the 80s, right? And we were scared to even talk to people. Or think COVID. That's kind of funny. But, so when he saw him, he said, "Go show yourselves to the priest." And as they went, they were cleansed. Wow. One of them, when he saw he was healed, came back praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him, and he was a Samaritan. That matters. Jesus asked, "Were not all 10 cleansed?" By the way, when he does that stuff, it's kind of like your dad when he asks you questions that he already knows the answer. That's what's going on there. "Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Has no one returned to give praise to God except this foreigner?" Then he said to him, "Rise and go. Your faith has made you well." The Samaritan was a foreigner. The Samaritan was the only one out of the 10 that wasn't Jewish. The other 9 were Jewish. They were his family. And yet the Samaritan, the foreigner, is the only one that came back and expressed his gratitude. How quickly we forget. How quickly we forget what God has done for us. And how quickly we forget to even be thankful for it. I think it's a good exercise, and it's a good exercise to help remind you of what God has done for you, to be thankful. You can thank God multiple times for the same thing. If he did something for you 25 years ago, you can reflect back on it and go, "Man, God, you were there for me 25 years. I'll never forget it. And I still thank you for that." That's a good practice. That's a good exercise. And so, when we look at our own lives, we can go back to that 100-year-old vet, and we can appreciate his pain. And that how time just eroded away that epic battle. World War II is just incredible. Literally, and people joke about it, but it's the truth. We'd all be speaking German right now if it weren't for those people. That was Hitler's goal, and he was well on his way. If he survived to get to speak German, And to go from that to people who are just whining and complaining about everything, right? I know you're guilty of it because I do it too. We whine about the stupidest stuff. "Yeah, my steak's a little overdone. Why is it taking so long for the food to get out here? This is ridiculous. We pay a lot of money to come out here." Could you imagine having those complaints in front of that guy? If he could, he'd take his 100-year-old arm and he'd reach across the table and he'd probably smack you right in the face. That's the image I get when I said, like, kapow, And meant to, when somebody's hysterical and they need the slap in the face to come to reality, that's the kind of slap I think some of us need, myself included at times. Come back to reality. Get a grip. What are you even complaining about? how much does this really matter? It's good challenges because it's easier to complain. It is. It's so much easier to complain. We fall into that rut so quickly. My mom used to call it pissing and moaning. Sorry if that offends you, but that's what's in my head right now. She would always say that. That and quit your bitching. Those were the two things she would say over and over again to us. And occasionally I got the, I'll give you something to cry about. Right? And when you think about that, I'll give you something to cry about, well, that's kind of the message. That's kind of the point today. Should have titled it that. I'll give you something to cry about. I'll redo this one in a couple of years. We'll call it that. I'll give you something to cry about. But that's really kind of the point. Like, you were throwing this colossal fit over this thing, and it's nothing compared to real problems and real life. Wow. It's a challenge, folks, today. It's a challenge. I'm not here to beat you up. I'm right in the same place as you are. But I am here to challenge you and challenge me to, in the natural world, be a little bit more cognizant of the stupid stuff that we complain about and a little bit more thankful for what we do have. And in the spiritual world, think about what God has done for you and be a little bit more like David, and let's be a little bit less like Elijah. Let me pray for you. Father, I thank you for a Memorial Day weekend. I even thank you for all the rain. That's a good thing most of the part, Lord. We need it. And everything's growing. Spring is here. I love seeing all that. There's so many little things that we are blessed with every day that we don't even see or acknowledge anymore. But they're consistent, and you're always Father, begin to mold our hearts this morning. When you remember that you took care of the bear, you took care of the and help us to be a little bit less like Elijah.
Who breaks the power of sin and darkness? Whose love is mighty and so much stronger? The King of glory, the King above all kings.
Precious.
Who shakes the
Have a great day. Enjoy things tomorrow.
holy thunder
See you next week.
and leaves us breathless in awe and wonder? The King of glory, the King above all